Next, we have Kris Van Ransbeek, and Kris Van Ransbeek is a founder of Streamliner. Streamliner is a collaborative platform which allows you to communicate amongst shippers, carriers, and received parties. Kris Van Ransbeek will tell us all about it. Welcome, Kris.
Thank you, Lawrence. Thank you. Good afternoon. So I'm going to actually elaborate about the role of standards in this digital supply chain. But before we start, let's go to what's the pain we're all feeling today. And I think a lot of the speakers already touched about it today. The supply chain, by essence, is different companies collaborating and working together. And what we see today is that if you look at the different players, being the carrier who has to transport something, the supplier who delivers the goods, the warehouse who's waiting for the shipment, the central services, the sourcing department who looks to the warehouse on saying, is the goods already arrived? And then maybe down the chain, the stores who are waiting for their final goods. And actually, a lot of the time, these people are using very ancient, I would also say, communication methods to find out. They are calling and emailing each other. And that's today the pain, that there is a lack of communication and collaboration and therefore visibility across the silos. We talk about the supply chain, but I think we should actually talk more about supply silos. And that's really what we try to kind of, at Streamliner, we try to kind of break and to really say, guys, in our private life, we've already made the step. We are no longer kind of calling our friends. If you look at your teenage daughters, she's no longer emailing her friends. They're all in a kind of digital communication. And that way of communicating, the way of using social tech, as it's certificately called, in industry, actually, this is what we want to do. We want to bring social tech to industry through a slot booking platform. And why a slot booking platform? Because by essence, the delivery, the handover of the goods, is the physical place where companies have to collaborate. So it's a place where we hand over physical goods, and as a lot of people told already this afternoon, we still hand over paper documents. So we started from the delivery, can be a loading or an unloading, and we really digitized that whole process. But now, what is needed to make this work, and especially to make this scale? Because that's the big challenge. And let's take a step back. We all know about Industry 4.0, the famous autonomous supply chain. It's everything around digitalizing industry, both manufacturing industry and also distribution. Actually, the Industry 4.0 is based around three key characteristics. You need three things to make this work: standardization, interconnectedness, and intelligence. But what do these three things really mean? Let's start with standardization. And I think with GS1, we are at the right address. It's all about standardization. And I think they've done a great job with this harmonized order to cash. Because we've got EDI standards since a very, very long time. But the retailers could not resist on tweaking a little bit the standard, introducing something which is specific for them. It might make sense from a retailer point of view, but for a supplier, it became a very expensive proposition. Because instead of implementing one standard, they had to implement a slightly different standard. So I think it's very important that those actors in the chain who really have, let's say, the power, they restrict themselves and say, let's stick to a one harmonized standard. Because let's be very clear, the EDI standard and everything we've been talking about automating is we're automating the happy flow, meaning if everything goes well, if the package arrives and the barcode is scannable, if we suddenly know what's in the truck. But we know that disproportionately our people on the floor are losing their times not with the happy flow, but with the 5, 10, 50% of goods which disappear, don't arrive, arrive damaged, arrived wet. And these flows, this is where we really have to kind of think about, is like, how do we marry the automation with the non-happy flow? And then there's the second element, is that our supply chain are not only top suppliers, there's also the tail. And the tail is maybe the guy who delivers once a year the Christmas strudels? Are you really going to force him to automate his full flow for the one purchase order a year? So I think it's also very important that when we design our supply chain, we are leaving room and we say maybe the 20/80 rule needs to be fully automated and the tail can be different. So that's steps one. Standardization are important. Second is interconnectedness. And there I think industry has to make a big change. Today, communication is social. And I always use the example is that we spend a lot of time hiring these young talents, and then they come into the office and their boss gives them a telephone and an email address. They haven't used that since the last 20 years. Everything has gone social now. They're communicating via platforms, but in the office, we're still sending point-to-point emails. We're still attaching documents. We're downloading files. This is really, it's becoming absurd. And as a manager, you should really look at yourself and saying, what am I asking my people to do? What tools are I giving them? A telephone and an email address is really totally out of date. It's all about chat. It's all about notifications. It's platforms. It's communities. It's not only files, it's pictures. This is really today the standard. It's not advanced anymore, but in many companies, it's unknown. And then the third is intelligence, and we're all bombarded with AI and ML, machine learning, etc. But let's be very clear. Again, as EDI, the AI and ML are going to do the stupid, repetitive tasks. It is not going to be the one, it's not going to be exception management. It's definitely not going to be conflict handling. This is where you need your people. So you really need to, if you really talk about standardization and automation, you really should be saying what we're going to focus is the happy flow, and what we're going to facilitate is use our people to do the more intelligent work to handle the conflicts. And this is really where you can see how in real life, because what I'm now going to use is a real life example, is where EDI and Streamliner marry the standardization of the happy flow with the exception management of through social tech on bringing everybody together. And the use case is, it's a very simple use case. I'm not going to tell the use case, but it's a company. It's with many, many suppliers. They had already their top suppliers responsible for 50% of the flow were on EDI, but they could not convince their tail, a tail which they needed because the tail suppliers delivered small products, niche products, which allowed them to differentiate. But for them, implementing EDI from a capabilities, but also from a cost point of view, was not a good business case. So somewhere they were stuck. They said, yes, we're going to do EDI on the bulk, but we want to make sure that we can integrate all our suppliers into one digital journey. Industry 4.0 is about digitizing your full supply chain, not only your top 20 suppliers who might be responsible for 50% of your flow. So the initial setup, which worked very well, was to say, for 50% of my orders, I've got an EDI order going out, and I get an EDI DSADV back from the supplier, confirming the delivery date and the content of what they're going to ship. Very happy for 50%, but for the 50% other orders, the question of where is my order was answered by emailing, following Excel lists, telephoning the suppliers, a lot of point-to-point communication, a lot of waste of time, and not actually what they wanted to do. So this is where actually, if you marry the EDI standard, I think it's very important, the EDI standard is the foundation, with a streamlined communication platform, you actually find that the happy flow and the exceptions can be handled in an efficient way. We actually integrate, of course, there's a link with the ERP system, we get the order information, but we also get the DSADV information, which allows us to inform the carrier and the warehouse of when the actual shipment is going to be done. But it also allows us that when the supplier updates his DSADV, automatically the supplier, the carrier gets an update and the booked slot is adapted. So suddenly there is one platform where people find the information, but also in the platform they can start chatting about the information, they can start exchanging information. they don't have to start looking for telephone numbers, who to call at this carrier, etc. All this goes in a very smooth way. At delivery, a box is broken, a photo is uploaded, and it's shared in real time with the supplier, and he can ask a question. So coming to the conclusion, I'm saying standardization of EDI messages is a must, because it's your foundation, it is your, what I would call the happy flow. But the communication, really offer your people something else than a telephone and an email. It is really going into platform. And this is what we say, it's like one process. The happy flow and the communication meet, and that's where I think the future lies.
Thanks a lot, Kris, for this tremendous presentation. Time is short, but we have one question for you, and that is, why are platforms such as Streamliner so important for the future?
Well, I think it's all about the people. I think what in supply chain we're still asking our people to do too much, what I would call low added value repetitive work. And we know that we're not going to find the people. So we need to make sure that we invest, making sure that the job is attractive, the job is interesting for the people, and that actually we get the job done. And that's by really making sure that this useless communication or this time-consuming communication are done in a way that people are doing in their private life. A little chat, a little picture, a status, a notification. This is the way actually we can really very efficiently, with no tech investments, link all the companies together. Because that's really what people have to forget. We never went to a WhatsApp training. We all use WhatsApp. We're all on WhatsApp. And this is a bit the future where we want to be. Yes, we all want to be on the platform and we can communicate.
All right. Thank you, Kris. Makes all sense to me.